Welcome to Inherited. I'm your host, Ruby Hall. And every week I'm joined by a guest who tells me about the rule, relic, recipe and ritual that has shaped who they are today. And today I speak with Tarrah Jordan. Tarrah has openly documented her fertility and IVF journey on TikTok, taking millions of people into every ebb and flow of the infertility journey in real time. In today's conversation, Tarrah opens up about the most painful 3 years of her life, 10 rounds of IVF, pregnancy loss, and how it feels to share her most vulnerable moments online. Her partner, Alexander, has been with her every step of the way, and the two have built a beautiful relationship and a really optimistic attitude towards life together. Tarrah is incredibly resilient, and today she reflects on her journey with gratitude and contentment. Just a note before you get into the episode, this chat does touch on miscarriage, and help and support is available via SANS on 1800 308 307. All right, here's Tarrah. Well, Tarrah, thank you so much for joining me on Inherited.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so excited. So is the entire Shameless media team. We have been following you along on TikTok, and we've seen your journey play out with IVF and fertility.
Yep.
So we will talk about that today. And I'd love to start with your relic, which is your IVF needles.
Yes.
As I was saying, you have documented your fertility journey on social media. Millions of people have really adored watching your journey play out. Firstly, though, can you talk to me about meeting your husband, Alexander, or Xander, as you do call him as well in your videos?
Yes.
When did you guys first meet?
It's a cute little love story. We actually started on the first day at Country Road, Chadstone. We started working on the shop floor in the same department, the menswear department.
You worked together?
We worked together, and it was my first day and his first day. Our staff numbers were like one number apart.
Yeah.
I started about an hour before him, and he kind of like wandered in, and I was like, oh, can I help you with anything? And he was like, no. And I was like, thank God, because I probably couldn't help you anyway because it's my first day. But he was like hovering around the store a little bit. And I was like, this is a bit odd. Like, what are you doing? And then the manager kind of came and was like, oh, this is Xander. It's his first day today. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I feel like from then we just had a really good friendship and a really good connection. And the rest is history. About a couple months later, I actually asked him out.
Yes.
And he said no.
He said no at the time. Yeah, so you were still colleagues at the time as well,
we were
working
still
together.
colleagues,
You'd formed a wonderful friendship.
Formed a really good friendship, and I asked him if he wanted to come, I think, shopping with me. It was just at Chadstone. He was like, oh no, I've got an appointment. And I was like, oh, okay, no worries. Yeah. And then the next day he ended up texting me, and we kind of started going out from there, and that's how we met.
How old were you when you first met? When was this in your life?
I was 22 and he was 19, so I'm a little bit older than him. And I think when he found out my age, he was like, oh, I don't have a chance, because at that age, you think that age gap is like a really big deal.
Yeah, of course.
But I've always been really young at heart, and he's quite mature for his age. So I feel like we even each other out, and age is just a number. And
exactly.
Now you don't even know.
What do you love the most about him? And he is so beautiful in all of your videos that I've watched along on
You make me choose
TikTok
one thing.
and Instagram. I know. You don't have to choose one at all.
I think it's just his kind-hearted soul. He is honestly just so selfless and would do absolutely everything for me. He would just drop everything. I mean, a really funny but good example is yesterday I had a hairdressing appointment at 7:00, and I had to come home. I had to do all my injections, and I was like, when am I going to eat? And, just have to think about the logistics of, coming home from work before an appointment.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I've actually got work meetings from 6 until 8. And I'm like, oh, he's the cook of the house. I'm not very good. So I'm thinking in my head, oh, I've got to make eggs on toast or something quick. Something quick that I can just quickly fuel my body before I go to an appointment. And he's like, no, I'll leave work early and come home and cook so that you can have dinner before my meetings start and you've got to go to your appointment. He's just that selfless that he'll just do anything for me.
That is so beautiful. Yeah. And you've been through a lot together, your journey over the last few years.
Yeah.
On becoming a mother and starting a family too, because we will get into your relic now, your IVF needles.
Yes.
Was it always a dream of yours to become a mother and start a family?
It was. For me, it's just that next step in the journey. And it's you found the love of your life and you just kind of want to make a little you and them.
Absolutely.
And I've always loved kids. I actually, when I first went to uni, I studied primary school teaching, and I've just always loved being around kids. I have 2 little nephews that I love. So I just think that naturally was, a sort of right next step for me.
Yeah.
And I think certainly in the past couple of years, like that maternal bone in my body has definitely been really prominent. Xana and I had no doubt in our mind that we wanted to have kids together.
Do you think seeing your siblings have babies as well, having little nephews, also brought that up for you as well? And it is just growing up as a woman, isn't it? Feeling in our body and our mind that we're ready.
Yeah,
ready
and a lot
for
of my friends started to have kids,
Yes.
and you know, we love our friends and we're so involved in their lives.
Yeah.
And so seeing them with their little ones, it just makes you want to have your own.
and start a little family.
That's it.
So when did you first realise you were struggling with your fertility?
From like pretty much our honeymoon in March or April of 2022, we started like actively trying. You have all the apps that tell you when you ovulate and all that sort of stuff. So we started trying naturally, trying to time it right for when we started to have kids. And then it just wasn't working. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think too much of it. Like, I've heard that it can take a bit of time. I had confided in one of my friends and, we were like, maybe the timing's wrong. And I was like, I swear the timing's not wrong. Like, I'm pretty regular with my cycle. Like,
yeah, right.
It just seems so odd that it had been a while and nothing had happened.
Yeah.
So I'd actually seen a GP September the year prior who had said to me, start taking prenatal vitamins, and if you're not pregnant in a year, come back and we'll refer you to a specialist. So when I wasn't pregnant by October of 2022, I thought, okay, maybe it's time to go back to the GP.
Yeah.
And let's just get referred to a specialist and see how they can help. So that's sort of when it first started. So I first saw a fertility specialist, I think it was November of 2022.
Yeah.
So it seems like such a lifetime ago now.
Of course.
But she put me on a medication called letrozole, which basically like helps your body ovulate. So you have a really strong ovulation.
Yeah.
And said, you know what, try this for 3 months. If it doesn't work, come back and make another appointment and we'll kind of discuss next steps. So did that and still wasn't pregnant. And I feel like that first year was actually one of the hardest because through IVF, you learn a lot. There's so much before that I didn't know in conceiving and a fertility journey that a month feels like a year. Mm-hmm. And every time you kind of get that negative or your period comes at the end of the month, it's really disheartening. You just don't know why.
Yeah.
And for that to go on for a full year, like, it's a long time.
That is a really long time. Because you initially saw the GP at the end of the year before for the vitamins, because you were saying we're going to sort of start to try now and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then nothing was really happening for you and you were talking to your friends, you were confiding people about it, because all of our bodies are so different as women. So we're seeing other friends in our lives or family members going through different journeys. But it takes a long time for us to get to the bottom of our own body.
Yeah.
What was it like month after month to see a negative test result?
It was really hard, and I found it really hard to not talk to people, which I think is one of the reasons why I ended up coming out on my social media. It was really to find a community, a like-minded community that was going through a similar journey that could provide me with comfort, selfishly, could provide me with some normality, because a lot of my friends had very fortunately fallen pregnant quite quickly or it had taken them maybe 3 to 6 months. But for me, it felt like I've already doubled that and it's still not happening. And I confided in one of my friends. Eventually I told my mum and I was like, you know what, I need people. I'm very much one of those people that like to bounce off another person and chat it out. So even if it's just me chatting to camera, it made me feel like I was chatting it out a little bit.
I think it's so important because people don't talk about this. And I think, for some people it's not what they feel comfortable doing. But for others, I think sharing your experience educates people as well and is making you feel less alone too, because there is a lot that's not spoken about, Like, I'm in my early 30s now and you just don't know what your body's going to do if you choose to go down that path. So I think you sharing it has just been really, really special, for a lot of people following along. When you think back to that first year of not falling pregnant, what other memories stand out to you?
Yeah, I think it was one of the hardest years in my fertility journey because I didn't know anything. And to me, information and knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And when I started going down the route of IVF, It's very regulated, and you understand what's happening every single week of the cycle.
Yeah.
When you try naturally, you just have to wait 4 weeks and see what happens. Like, do you get your period? Do you not? Like, do you test positive? Do you not? Whereas there's a bit more hand holding in IVF through each week of the cycle. So you can actually have an expectation with shorter time periods, and you just kind of go, I've got to get to this point, then I've got to get to this point, then I've got to get to this point. So for me, it's a little bit easier to consume in that way, because you just kind of make it to the next step and it feels a little bit faster.
Your relic is the 5 Sharps containers of
is.
IVF needles that remind you of your journey.
Yeah.
Was there a pivotal moment when you decided to go ahead with the IVF treatment?
Yeah, so after we had tried this letrozole for a couple of months and it still hadn't worked, I went back to the specialist, and she recommended a surgery to me, which is a hysteroscopy and a laparoscopy, to kind of have a look at my uterus and see if there's any endometriosis or anything in there that could be affecting my fertility. So I went ahead and did that surgery in February of 2023. And they found a little bit of endometriosis, which they removed, but everything looked normal. Like, my tubes were open, they flushed them out, and she was like, everything looks absolutely perfect in there. So great in the way that nothing was wrong, frustrating in the way because it didn't give you an answer. So it's kind of this like unexplained infertility that we talk about, that there's no like actual answer to why you're not falling pregnant. So now that we'd kind of done that surgery, again, we tried for 3 months with the letrozole. We had our European holiday booked in, and we just kind of wanted to go and enjoy that. And a lot of people will tell you go on holiday and you'll fall pregnant. It's really bad advice, but you'll hold on to anything. And so I thought, well, this is the holiday. I'm going to be as relaxed as I possibly can be. If it still doesn't happen, we'll come back and we'll just do IVF. So that was sort of the decision that Sandra and I had made together, that we just wanted to go straight into a round of IVF. I think that naively, maybe a lot of people think this way, that IVF is going to be the answer. And if you do one round, you're going to fall pregnant. Like, surely, like, there's so much science involved that one round will get you as many embryos as you possibly could, and then surely one of those you'll fall pregnant. And I think that's a really big misconception with IVF, and something that I wish I'd known. And I think if you told, May 2023 Tarrah that I would be sitting here 10 rounds of IVF later, I would be like, no, you're joking. Like, even from a financial perspective, I'd be like, no way could I afford to do that. But, I think that that's what IVF is. It's just, it really is a journey, and it's an educational journey, and no two bodies are the same. And then what one person will need isn't necessarily what the other person needs. And you just need to trial and error, I guess, in a little way, to find your perfect little concoction on what's going to work for you.
Talking about the unexplained infertility, what was that like for you, I guess, mentally, to go through when there just wasn't an answer time and time again? Like, doctors and people were telling you, you should be okay to fall pregnant.
It's really tricky because there's no definite, this is why you're not falling pregnant. People will talk about male factor infertility or female factor infertility, but for us, there was never anything specific that caused our infertility. And even to this day, like, we talk about like AMH number, which I've got on the lower end, but that's not a reason for my infertility. I've got something else called an MTHFR gene mutation. Again, it's not a cause of an infertility, but something we found along the way. So, maybe if you accumulate all these things together, it makes it harder. I'm not sure, but there's no black and white answer. And that is really tricky, because if we knew what the answer is, you'd think, great, just fix that one thing and then you'll be fine. But it's just not, it's just not as simple.
You guys are so resilient. You've been through such a journey together, and you should be so proud of yourself. But I feel like I'm going to keep saying that this entire interview, because it's really like just eye-opening and amazing to see. Many people hear IVF, as you were saying, and think it'll be the thing that works. So did you go into your first round thinking this will be, the solution I needed? Did you sort of have those thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think so. You put a lot of trust in your specialist, and you don't know any different, and they tell you sort of like what your protocol is, and you go into it, and you kind of get told, like when you go for a first scan, you have this many follicles and you don't know if that's good or bad. Like you've got no benchmark. You don't really know what other people have. And so you kind of go into it blind and you're like, is this good? Is this bad? I don't know. And then, you know, it kind of blew my mind a little bit. It was that just because you have X amount of follicles doesn't mean you'll get X amount of eggs.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of misconception. And then you get a number of eggs and that doesn't mean that all of those eggs are going to be mature enough to be fertilised. And so that number goes down. So it's just a lot of different milestones throughout the journey that I guess change the outcome a little bit more than what you thought going into it. So, yeah, I definitely thought that IVF was going to be the answer for us. And yes, maybe we do 1 round, maybe we do 2, maybe we'd max do 3, like surely by that point. But, it just wasn't my reality.
You've been doing 10 rounds of IVF.
10 rounds, yeah. And each time we changed something and each time we learnt something and each time we did something different. So, you know, they give you these protocols that you're on, and the first round we managed to get 1 embryo. I've got to try and remember it all, which we transferred, but it didn't work. And the second round of IVF, we did the whole stim cycle and my body just didn't respond. So it ended up being a completely cancelled cycle. And then the third round, you know, you try a different protocol, and that third round was really devastating for me actually, because in my first round I got a number of eggs, but a lot of them weren't mature, and only mature eggs are able to be fertilised. And so my number dropped significantly with fertilisation. So for my third round, our real focus was trying to get those mature eggs so that they were able to be fertilised. And I was so excited when we got 5 mature eggs. And I was like, yes, like this is so exciting. Like that is 5 opportunities to have fertilised eggs. And then you have to wait 24 hours for that call. And they called me and they were like, you've got 1. So that was just like a knife to the stomach. It just feels like what went wrong and what happened. But it's just a learning curve, and
of course,
just because you've got mature eggs doesn't mean they're all going to fertilise. And we tried different ways of fertilisation to try and give me the best possible result. There's this thing they do called piezo-ICSI, which is actually they use vibration. They select a little sperm and they use vibration to get it into the egg, and it's supposed to be less invasive and help. You know, like there's so much that they can do
and trial and error.
But each time it's sort of a new round because you've got to get new rounds of eggs. And
that's it. It's a long process for you. This has spanned over 3 years. And so you have had 5 failed transfers in a row.
Yeah.
And this is before you fell pregnant for the first time.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment when you felt like giving up along this journey?
Do you know what? No. That might surprise a few people, but I've never doubted that it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And I knew one day that it would.
Yeah.
And it's a really hard thing to get to that point of feeling like you're going to give up.
Yeah.
And for me, I just didn't even feel close to that. Like 5 failed transfers is a lot, and it's a lot physically for your body to go through that, and it's even more mentally to go through. But I just felt like that there were still so many options available to us. And I was like, you know what, we will get there. And whether that's a product of Xander and I, or whether that's using donor eggs or donor embryos or adoption, whatever it is in the future, like I was open to it all. And I just like really believed that, no, one day we will get there.
Yeah.
And we love our fertility specialist, and she really like felt that way too.
Yeah.
And so we felt really comfortable in her hands.
Of course.
Which really helped us positively look at our journey.
And you can see that in the content that you've put out about your journey as well. You and Xander together, you're both very positive. I mean, and it's so special that you are vulnerable and willing to share your story with so many as well. But I think that would inspire others. And I'm sure at times it would have gotten really, really tough, but to keep that positive outlook on it all. And I'm sure that's how you guys would bounce off each other in your relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Xander would just be amazing.
Yeah.
Like anything I needed, he would be there for me, and vice versa. And we just did everything together, and we chatted it out, and we, you know, had our options available, and we talked through everything. And there was, you know, never a tense or felt like there was a conversation that we couldn't have. Like we were always really open so that we were on the same page throughout the entire journey.
You say as well you're sentimental. You did say this when you sent in your relic.
Yes.
Have you always been, do you think?
I have always been sentimental.
Yeah.
I'm such like a hoarder in that way.
Yeah.
I get very attached to things, and this is why I say that my IVF needles are my relic. Like I've got, those 5 containers full of IVF needles through our 10 rounds, and these hold so many memories.
Yeah.
And one day I'm going to look back at them and know what I've gone through to get to this point.
Do you think you'll continue holding on to them, the IVF needles?
I think so. I have this you've probably seen it, but when like a baby's born and they're surrounded by the IVF needles, then it thinks I'm nuts. But, I'm so sentimental.
Of course.
Look, that little baby is the produce of all of this pain, and I would love little keepsake. So again, quite sentimental.
Of course.
I have over 100,000 photos on my phone. Like I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
But you never know when you want to look back at something or when you want to grab something. So.
And that's even documenting your journey now. You can go back, you can look at everything you've gone through, that you've sacrificed as well. Your partner, Xander, has been with you every step of the way. What do you think you've appreciated the most about his unwavering support?
Oh, everything.
Yeah.
He's just a sweetheart. I can't even put into words. He's so selfless. Whatever I need, if he could click his fingers and give it to me, he would.
Yeah.
And having that support through a journey like this has been really helpful.
Yeah.
And knowing that he's not angry or, he's not irritated by me not helping her out around the house or something like that is just really comforting to know. It's a really safe space between us.
Yeah, because you've got to be vulnerable. You're on this journey together, and you couldn't do this with someone that wasn't, by your side.
And it can be tricky.
Of course.
A journey like this can really test relationships.
Totally.
But to be honest, I feel like it's really brought us closer together.
Yeah.
And then also me being really mindful of him. I think sometimes the men are forgotten in a journey like this.
Yeah.
And he, will equally have his own emotions and feelings going through it. And so I think it's always also really important to be there for them and make sure that they're okay and ask those questions too. I'll constantly just be how are you feeling? Are you okay? What do you think? What are your thoughts on this? And most of the time he'll be I agree with you because he's just so lovely. But if there is anything on their chest, it gives them a really good opportunity to kind of chat it out too. So I think that's really important.
Hi listeners, and thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Inherited. Our podcast is no stranger to sensitive subjects, which is why I want to talk to you about sun care and sensitive skin. It can be tricky to find a sunscreen that does the job without causing further irritation, but NIVEA Sun has a range with you in mind. The NIVEA Sun UV Face range comes in a mattifying sunscreen, a BB cream, and of course a formula made for the sensitive girlies. NIVEA Sun UV Face Sensitive Protect SPF 50 is a broad spectrum sunscreen that offers protection from harmful UVA and UVB with 0% sticky feeling. And they've dermatologically proven its compatibility with sensitive skin types. But the best part is that this formula is enriched with vitamin E to help hydrate, repair, and protect the skin. So if you've been searching for a sunscreen suitable for sensitive faces, NIVEA Sun has you covered. A big thank you to NIVEA Sun for supporting this episode of Inherited. And before we go, I must let you know, always read the label and follow the directions for use. Sunscreens are only one part of sun protection. Avoid prolonged high-risk sun exposure. Reapply frequently. Yeah, emotions are heightened at a time like this for you both. Yeah. Speaking of ways that you and Xander have supported each other, we will get into your ritual next. And this is something that you share with him. What is it?
So every morning, again, he's such a sweetheart, but every morning, we've done this for the entirety of our relationship. He'll often make me a coffee in the morning and he'll bring it to me in bed and we'll just sit in bed and, enjoy the coffee. And sometimes we can be sitting there in complete silence. We don't even have to talk to each other, but it's just that moment together is really beautiful and sort of such a great start to the day. And to me, it's almost before he's woken up, he's thought about me. And he's thought, I'm going to do something special for her each morning. And I've actually given up coffee through going through my IVF treatment, and he has found me a decaffeinated tea that he will instead bring me in the morning so that we can still enjoy that moment together. It really is such a great way to start the day.
Start the day together. And so you say you sit in bed for 10 to 15 minutes, sometimes in silence too. I mean, when the person is your person, you can be in silence and it's like the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
I would imagine it's also a really peaceful place for you to start your day too, especially going through your fertility and IVF journey. In what ways did stress manifest for you over these 3 years of your treatment?
I think the stress stemmed from not having answers and just not knowing, which I think is why the IVF journey was a really good process for me, because I felt like I could learn so much. I learned so much about the female body. I learned so much about, you know, how we conceive and the stages that those little milestones, and there's so many that we have to hit for even a pregnancy to take place. And I think whenever I felt stressed, it was because I didn't know what was going on. And as soon as I found out that information, it made me feel more in control of the situation, even though there is so much that's out of your control and you really have to let go. Understanding what is happening brings a lot of comfort, which relieves me of that stress. Also, honestly, the community on IVF. I originally started to find a like-minded community to help me through it. And, you know, it's gone leaps and bounds beyond what I ever thought it was going to be. And I just am so humbled by all these people on the internet that are not only invested in my journey, but offering little pieces of advice, because that has just helped us so much through our journey, and being able to bring those, you know, ideas of what's worked for other people to our fertility specialist. We still have that source of truth or the anchor point with the specialist, but being able to find out that information through other people, it's really special. And yeah, it's a tricky one because you don't want that unsolicited advice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for so many people are going through this, and so being able to hear other perspectives and bring that into your journey, and if it's going to work, I think it's, you know, beneficial to know at least.
It's so interesting. You just said before that about your IVF treatment, you look at it with such a like optimistic, positive lens. And I just think that's like so powerful. You have so much optimism. And I think that is just so credible to you and what you've gone through to go, well, no, through this journey, I've learned so much about my body. And if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have known, even though it's been some of the hardest years of your life as well.
Absolutely. And I think as well, like, I didn't realize when I first started that how many people I would be helping as well, which also brought something bittersweet to this whole journey, is that even though it's such a shit place to be in and it's a club that you don't want to be in, it's, you know, a club that other people are in, unfortunately, and we don't talk about it enough. We're just taught in school that you have unprotected sex and you will get pregnant. And so when that doesn't happen, it's really foreign. Like, we just don't know what else, you know, to do. And I think that the education around fertility and the women's body and all of those little milestones that you have to go through, it's been a really beautiful thing to be able to share with people through this journey. You
were saying that you gave up coffee for your IVF treatments.
Yeah.
Were there other sacrifices you had to make with IVF?
I think there's a lot. A lot of them you might be like, oh, you don't have to do that, and like you don't have to give up coffee. Like, this isn't the answer for anyone that's listening.
No,
but when you go through 3 years of infertility, you're just willing to try anything and everything that can sort of like help support your fertility treatment. So for me, giving up caffeine was a big one, just because I've heard that it reduces inflammation in your body, and any sort of inflammation that we can reduce in our body could help with the implantation of an embryo. So that was really important to me. Obviously, drinking alcohol, that's not recommended at any stage of pregnancy, so giving up that. I've also was diagnosed with one of the genetic markers for celiac disease. So since February this year, I've been gluten-free, which has been a journey.
Yeah, of course.
Actually quite easy to do in a place like Melbourne, where we have so many food options available to us. But, you know, a lot of my favourite foods, croissants and, you know, schnitzels, or, you know, just things like that. It always feels like you miss out on those sorts of things. So it is tricky to have to kind of make these sacrifices, but I feel like it's worth it in the end if it all works out, and that's what I just held on to.
Of course. How did IVF change your relationship with your body? Because I know it's quite a process on your body as a female and your hormones too.
Luckily, I didn't have a lot of side effects from the IVF medication. I feel like I'm the real anomaly there. So I didn't feel like I was being thrown around by the hormones that I was taking, which was really lucky. But it's still a lot to have to administer that every single day. You have to be quite disciplined to be able to continue going with that, and really meticulous because the dosages are all different across everything that you take. So you have to make sure that you're, doing it right and you can't get anything wrong. I think in that sense, it's quite tricky. And it's just always having to, we talk about sacrifices. It's the timing of medication. So it's like if you're doing a stim cycle and you've chosen 6 p.m. to do your injection, that might mean that you can't go out for dinner, or, it's just like little things like that.
Life sacrifices.
Exactly. Which aren't a big deal.
No.
But in the grand scheme of things sort of stack up.
Definitely. Yeah. This has gone on for 3 years of your life, and it's an emotional toll that comes with it too. And then when, physically as well, your body's going through it, it could be a lot.
Yeah.
Did you and Xander ever have a conversation about not sharing anything with the public? Or were you always on the same page about when you were starting to put your content out there?
Yeah, I think we were both on the same page when it came to initially sharing, because I think that we were both sort of seeking that understanding from people who are going through something similar. I don't think either of us thought it was going to get as big as it has today.
Yeah.
But it's a really beautiful thing to have grown. Yeah. And both of us are just blown away by the community that we've managed to be able to build. And I think that it's just the positivity that has come from that community, not only for me, but for me to them, is just so beautiful in itself that we couldn't be happier with how this turned out throughout our journey.
Yeah, it really shaped your journey for you guys
absolutely.
Too. One of the most personal videos you shared was about losing your first pregnancy.
Yeah.
Was that quite hard to film? I'm sure there were days when it would have been hard for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because we just received sort of negative test after negative test after negative test, we were so used to that outcome. And we were also very used to sort of picking ourselves up off the floor when that was the outcome. And this positivity that we have is very centered around, okay, but it's okay, we've learned something and we're going to take that and we're going to do something else. And when we first got that positive test, I really didn't think that was even going to happen. We did our first double embryo transfer. So this is transfer 6 and 7 for us.
Yeah.
And, I'd started bleeding right before I had to have my beta blood test. And so I kind of, came on to update. It hadn't worked, and we had this bleeding, and I did a test out of habit, but to see those 2 lines, it was the first time we'd ever seen 2 lines on a test. And I mean, I've got the reaction video pinned on my TikTok, but it's just complete shock both for me and Xander, and we were just so excited, and we'd never gotten to that point before.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, or probably for a lot of people actually, you see those positive lines on a pregnancy test and you believe it. You're just this is it.
Yeah.
I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
What could go wrong from here? And we started telling people. It was a Saturday morning when we found out, and I had quite a busy weekend planned with just friends. We were going to see a musical that night, and the next day, I had a planned lunch with a few girlfriends. I was like, oh, how beautiful that this all lines up. And going through a journey like this, you never feel like you're going to be able to surprise people. So to have that sort of moment where we could surprise people was really special for us.
Of course.
So we sort of told everyone across the weekend. And one thing when you go through infertility, or I'm sure if you don't, is you kind of do a pregnancy test and you do one the next day and you do one the next day and you kind of keep going. And for us, the test line just wasn't getting any darker. It should be getting darker as your HCG rises, but for us it just wasn't getting any darker. And we had our initial blood draw, and the results were fine for where they needed to be. And when they were come back in a week and get your second blood draw, and I said, I don't know, because my tests aren't getting any darker. Can I get in earlier? I just need to see that they're going up. And they got me in and they'd gone down. So I think at that point I just knew, okay, well, it hasn't worked. Like, it hasn't stuck. It's something called a chemical pregnancy or a miscarriage before 5 weeks. It was a real shock to Xander and I because we just didn't think that would happen to us. It's like anything. It's like, you think like it's not going to happen to me, and to have something so beautiful taken away from you so quickly was just really hard to kind of process, and a different process for us coming out of the journey that we've just been through, because you almost get handed your piece of cake and then you just get it taken away from you so quickly. So it took us a while to sort of bring ourselves out of that. But, with the whole journey, I feel like we've been resilient in the way that there's another option out there. Yeah. And so we just booked in with our fertility specialist like straight away. And I just said to her, can I go again? Can I go again straight away? Like, is that okay? Because, do I need to wait a month or can I go straight away? I think they're the sort of questions that I had. And she said, if you feel like you can go again straight away, like that's a personal choice. Like that's up to you. Yeah. And one thing about fertility is the time it takes away from you. And I think that's another sort of sacrifice, that we were kind of talking about. It's if you have to wait a whole, another cycle, that's like a whole nother month before you can try again. And so, it's one of those things that it's just like you kind of just want to get on with it and you kind of just want to do it again. And if there's no medical reason why I can't do that, then let's just go straight away. So we did.
Yeah. And that was early this year, wasn't it, for you?
Yeah. So our double transfer was August of this year.
Wow. Well, your ritual with Xander is so beautiful. It's brought a lot of peace in your life, and it's been really interesting to talk about the things that you've had to sacrifice to along the way. Yep. We will end on your rule, and you share this with Xander too. It is 11:11, which I love this. I've always looked at 11:11 and had a little thought as well. You guys used to send this to each other, is that correct?
Yeah. We still do. We did it today.
What does this mean to you, 11:11?
Just throughout our relationship, really, like 11:11 is just always something that we see. Like we see everywhere. Yeah. And when it gets to 11:11 on our phones and we notice it, we'll just quickly send each other a text and say, make a wish. Yes. And it's really beautiful. And like if you look back at our message thread, you can see all the make a wish, little messages to each other. And it's just something that we do, and it's really sweet. And going through this fertility journey, there's really only one thing that we've been wishing for this entire time. So, and
you do it every day together. Yeah, it's like a mini manifestation.
It is.
Yes. Also, if you see it, you'll send it.
If we see it, we'll send it. And there's just like little things, like sometimes we'd be going in for an egg collection. I'd look at the clock and it would be 11 past 11. Like, what are the odds of that? So it just became a real sort of like angel number for us, or good luck number for us.
And at both, I'm assuming you were probably thinking the same thing throughout.
Yeah, always. Yeah. We wouldn't tell each other because then it wouldn't come true, but we'd know.
Yeah, no, I'm so on board with that as well. You have said this rule has worked for you both because in late August, you shared a video of the results from your 10th IVF round. It has 2 million views over on TikTok, and I remember watching it and getting goosebumps, Tarrah. Can you tell me again and the listeners who might not have seen it what happened for you on that day?
We got a positive pregnancy test.
Congratulations, Tarrah. Yeah, it was really beautiful video. If you're listening now, go and have a look on TikTok, Tarrah_Jordan.
Yeah. It's been a journey though, as we know, as we've heard. But I think that, getting that positive after the miscarriage that we did have, really, it was beautiful because I knew my body could do it. Yeah. And seeing every day, it was a bit hit and miss at the start, and we came in low, but every single day just progressing was just really beautiful. And now I'm 11 weeks tomorrow. Yeah.
So in that video, what were you thinking really that day of filming that video? How were you feeling? Did you expect this to happen when it did?
You know what? I didn't, because I started testing at 5 days past a 5-day embryo transfer, which is equivalent to 10 days past ovulation, which a lot of people can get a positive pregnancy test. And I tested and it was negative. And I was like, oh, okay, it hasn't worked. And so I was really sad. And then I tested at 6 days past and it was negative again, like stark white. And I've looked at so many negative tests that I was just like, it's just not worked. And it got to 7 days past, and I've known from watching other people from experience that if you don't have a positive test by 7 days past, like you're pretty far, like you're out. But that's just what you think.
Yes.
And I remember doing the pregnancy test in the bathroom, and usually we would wait until we filmed the video to look at it because it's so beautiful to kind of capture your reaction.
Yeah.
And I got out of the shower and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to look at it because it's going to be negative. And I saw such a faint line and I said, no, like it's so late. Like why would it come through now? And ran out and I got Xander and I was like, can you see a line on this? Like you start having line eyes and, you think, oh, is this it? And it was one of those tests that aren't as sensitive as other tests. So I said, Xander, get to the supermarket, go and get, a box of all these other tests so that then we can do them and, doing all the tests and kind of being like, can you see a line? But you can't really do anything until the next day because you've got to wait for that HCG to rise. And the next day when we saw that the test was a little bit darker, we were like, it's darker. Like we hadn't had that before because the miscarriage, the lines got lighter.
Yeah.
And we had our beta test at 10 days past. And I remember doing a test that morning and it being not that much darker. Like it just seemed really light. And I was like, oh, we're going through this again. Like it just didn't work out. And I got a call from the clinic and they were like, your HCG is at 40, which for 10 days past, they want it to be over 100. So it was quite low for where they wanted it. And they said, you know what, come back for a blood test in 3 days and we'll see where it is. And over that weekend was actually Xander's birthday. And the next day I tested and it felt like it was so much darker. And from that point, we were just like, this could actually be it. And when we did that test 3 days later, and I think it came back at like 145, like we were just like over the moon, but it was still low, so there was still that.
There was still obviously a little bit of doubt.
There was.
Like you don't want to maybe get too excited, especially after
100%.
What happened in August too, having the loss. You just don't know. But you're always holding out hope and you have the entire time.
Yes.
That video was incredible.
Oh, thank
Seeing
you.
your reaction and everyone just got around it, of course.
Yeah.
How has your pregnancy been going? Anyway, how are you feeling now?
I feel like I've been pretty lucky. Yeah. I don't have any like overwhelming sense of feeling pregnant, which has actually surprised me. I thought that like I'd feel different in a way. And I don't know, you hear about those stories about people kind of getting to 4 months pregnant and have no idea. And I was like, I get that. Like I actually get that.
Interesting.
But no, I've been very lucky and I'm very grateful for not feeling too bad. Mostly I've been feeling quite tired, very hungry, and occasional nausea, but nothing too bad at all.
Yeah. And how's it been to share this news with your friends and family? Yeah.
It's been really special. So I didn't have that surprise element this second time because there was so much uncertainty. And I think that it's been a bit of a rocky start to that pregnancy for that reason. And I think because I had a little bit of a late implanter that, we started really slow, it was always, just kind of getting to the next blood test or just kind of getting to the next week. And the clinic didn't even say, congratulations, you're pregnant, I think, until like my third or fourth beta. So I feel like that in itself is like, I'm testing positive, but I just don't know yet. It just wasn't confirmed. And then I remember the clinic finally telling me that I was pregnant and my fertility specialist called me and she said, okay, there's one of three things that can sort of happen from here given your low HCG results. And I was like, strap on in. I was like, give them to me. And she mentions things like ectopic pregnancy and a bladdered ovum and, all these sorts of things that can happen. And I think you just go, okay, so I've just got to make it to that next point. But I think that is quite common in pregnancy. And I think a lot of those milestones is why people don't announce until a little bit later because you just want that certainty that everything's going to be okay.
What has been the best part of preparing to become parents now with Xander? I mean, you've gone through so much together and you explained before how this has shaped your relationship.
Yeah.
It's brought you close together and this could be a really trying time for a couple. But what is the best part now about preparing to, start your family?
For us, we're just trying to embrace each week at a time that we're pregnant and not get too far ahead of us, but just like really embrace the moment. And there's so many little milestones that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah.
Holding a baby in your arms like that, I think I'm just going to lose it. I'm just going to be an absolute sobbing mess. But I think also seeing Xander with our baby might make me cry more, to be honest. And, you know, I see him with our friends' kids, and there's something about a man holding a baby. It's really beautiful.
Especially a man that you love, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he's just going to be the best dad.
Yeah.
So I just can't wait to give him that gift.
You guys will be gorgeous parents. Having gone through 3 years of IVF, you both made the wish to become parents when you saw the 11-11 rule pop up.
Yes.
What do you find yourself making wishes for now, do you think, when it comes up?
I think from now we just wish for a healthy and happy pregnancy, and, you know, we just can't wait for that next scan where we can see little bub. We've named them baby Tarzan,
I've
which
seen
is
this, so gorgeous. Yeah.
It's a play on our names, Tarrah and Xander.
Yeah.
And just being able to like see, you know, get to that next milestone and hear the heartbeat and see how much baby Tarzan has grown.
Yeah.
Is really what we're wishing for, like just getting to that next point and just hoping that this pregnancy progresses all the way to term.
Oh, I'm so happy for you, Tarrah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some listeners may have had their own experience with infertility or IVF perhaps. What is your key takeaway for those who might feel alone right now throughout their journey?
I think just knowing that there are other people going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And we talk about sort of giving up, but I think that don't feel like you have to give up.
Yeah.
And you've experienced all of your worst days, so it's only going to get better from here. And I just think that, you know, what might feel so far away could be closer than you think. So keep going.
Again, that ties into your positive outlook on it all.
Yeah.
So with all of that in mind, Tarrah, what do you intend on passing on, and who are you passing it on to?
I think for me, it's about the positivity and the mindset. And I do get a lot of compliments on that, but I think it's such an important perspective to have. It could be as simple as, you know, instead of saying that I have to, you say I get to. And I think that something as simple as just shifting that is going to make a situation just so much more positive. And I feel like if there's one thing that I can pass on, it's the way that people look at things. And, you know, just because you go through a journey and maybe it's an IVF journey or maybe it's a, you know, a difficult part in your life doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It just means it's a step in your journey.
Doesn't define you or your relationship or who you are as a person.
Yeah.
You have such a positive outlook on life, and I think that's been a huge superpower too, especially with all the help and support you've had as well.
Yeah.
This is it now.
This
Congratulations, Tarrah. It's been a joy to chat to you today.
Thank you for having me.
And I can't wait to keep watching along.
Stay tuned.
You've been listening to Inherited, and to support Tarrah, you can follow her on Instagram and TikTok at Tarrah, that's TARRAH_Jordan. And a quick one, we are a new show, so we would really love it if you could hit subscribe and spread the word. That way I can continue speaking to really incredible guests, and it's the best way for our audience to grow as well. So hit the subscribe button wherever you're watching right now. And if you can too, take a photo, share it to your stories, spread the word. We would really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this episode, click follow on your favorite podcast app. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Inherited the Pod, and we'll be back with another episode next Tuesday.